Have you ever seen a scandal that was so complex that it shocked the most powerful court in the world? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was the story of 17th century France, where King Louis XIV lived with their hottest wives in the most beautiful palace in the world, called the Palace of Versailles. But every great thing requires a great cost, and similarly, the king faced the darkest and most dangerous act in their country that was so horrifying that it cost him everything, including his most beautiful wife in the world and his most prestigious reputation. That resulted in the acquisition of over 400 people, where 36 got really executed, and even the king's mistress also got in trouble. But what exactly happened behind the closed doors of Versailles, and how did the most beautiful place in the world become the most brutal scandal in history? From the very beginning, the life of Louis XIV was not full of flowers. Born in 1638, but just 4 years later in 1642, his life took a really drastic change. When his father died, he became the king, when he was just 4 years older kid. But being a king, his life became full of chaos because then France was thrown into a phase of civil wars that were known as the Fronde. And as Louis grew older, he became the Sun King. But to solidify his control, he transformed a small hunting lodge in the countryside known as Versailles into something very extraordinary palace, with the excessive design and huge gardens that showcased the king's wealth and control over the nobility. And everything at court followed a strict schedule. The king's daily routine included ceremonies like the lever, when he woke up, and the coucher, when he went to bed. Nobles also started to participate in these rituals because it helped them to stay close to the king. But the strict rules made it hard for them because they dictated how people would behave, speak, and even dress. While the king enjoyed his freedom, and the palace was filled with some of his most beautiful and hottest wives in the world, and he was regularly involved in the pleasurable activities among them simultaneously. The most beautiful palace of Versailles also became a cultural hub where the king supported the arts, which invited famous playwrights like Molière and hosted grand balls, theater performances, and concerts. However, despite the palace's beauty and the beautiful women, the people of Versailles had to face tons of problems in their everyday lives, including overcrowding and poor sanitation that was slowly making their lives hell. But they don't want to leave the palace, because it was the only key for them to gain power and prestige. And as the kingdom started facing these challenges, a new, very horrifying and shocking scandal started to come into the limelight in the country, and this was the beginning of the most horrifying scandal in the world. Now, there was a woman named Marie-Madeleine Marguerite d'Aubray, better known as the Marquise de Brinvilliers, whose shocking crimes in the late 1600s really sparked the fear of crimes among the people. And friends, be ready, because this is the beginning of the affair of the poisons. Now, the Brinvilliers came from a wealthy and influential family of de Brinvilliers, but her life took a really dark turn when she became impressed and involved physically with Captain Gaudin de Sainte Croix, who was an army officer. This duo became a really dangerous alliance because Sainte Croix introduced her to poisons and manipulated the Brinvilliers to kill her own father and his two brothers just for the inheritance. And before killing her family, she tested her poisons on hospital patients to ensure their effectiveness. They committed many crimes together, however. Her crimes came to the limelight in 1672, when Sainte Croix, who was the lover of the Brinvilliers, died unexpectedly, and authorities found a casket containing letters from Brinvilliers that included the poison recipes and records of their activities among his belongings. After this, the authorities understood the situation, that there was something very horrifying and something very brutal. Crimes were ongoing in the country, and there was the existence of a larger network of poisoners who were operating in secret. Meanwhile, the Brinvilliers also realized she was under suspicion and had to take steps or she would be killed, or something more horrifying would happen to her that she can't imagine even in her worst nightmare. And after this terrifying realization, she fled from France and went into hiding. However, despite her efforts, she was captured in Liège in 1676 and faced the brutality order, including the water cure, where she was forced to drink excessive amounts of water, or maybe something more that was not even written in the pages of history. And then she confessed to the crimes and the murders. Then, on July 17, 1676, she was executed by beheading, and her body was burned in front of the whole public of the country, which shocked the whole world and showcased the brutal punishment for the criminals. However, the crimes didn't stop. The fear of poisoning spread across the country and also had a major impact on the French Revolution. Now these events revealed the darker side of the country, and when the authorities did further investigations, then they found even something more horrifying thing: the use of poison and occult practices in the aristocracy. Now, there was another lady in the center of this darker world, Catherine de Chaise Monvoisin, better known as La Voisin, who made this scandal even more dangerous because, this time, time, she involved even the closest of the king in the crimes. Laisan, who was born in 1640, was a fortune teller, sorceress, and poisoner who became infamous in the 17th century for her dark, horrifying works. She offered services including selling poisons, creating aphrodisiacs, and performing occult rituals for a range of clients, including members of the French aristocracy, which marked a new and dangerous chapter in the affair of the poisons. Additionally, her services also included the Black Masses, which were the bizarre ceremonies that also involved prayers to literally invoke supernatural forces to fulfill her clients' desires, like to secure love, eliminate rivals, or gain political power. And, to complete all those dark activities, she has a completely desperate team of fortune tellers, alchemists, and poisoners in Paris. Now, the king was really against these crimes, and things get even more complicated when her own mistress, Madame de Montespan, also got involved in these activities with the Laisan and also participated in Black Masses, a ritual to invoke the dark forces to keep Louis XIV in her affection. And there was also a big probability that some of the big names of the court were also involved with her in occult horrifying practices that revealed how deeply corruption was going into the society, and how much people would get to just secure the power. But as the fear started spreading across the country, authorities got to know about it. Quickly, King Louis XIV established a special court as Chambre Ardente in 1679 to investigate and prosecute cases of poisoning and witchcraft during the affair of the poisons. Now, the king created this tribunal to stop the growing, terrifying scandal of poisonings and occult practices that was spreading like a fire all over the country. Now, the aim of the king was to investigate those individuals who are deeply involved in these kinds of horrifying scandals, with the Chambre Ardente, which means the burning court, symbolizing its focus on rooting out dangerous practices and delivering justice. But this was the time. The things were not easy. As the investigation began, the king found some of the biggest names of his societies that he couldn't reveal, or it would just drain the king's reputation. So, the king ordered him to maintain secrecy while investigating to prevent his reputation, and also protect the public from the panic. Between the years 1679 to 1682, things were not easy for the court, and the Chambre Ardente held 210 sessions, issued 319 arrest warrants, and sentenced 36 people to death, including the infamous poisoner Laisan. But it's not like an easy task for the authorities to take the biggest criminal into custody. In the late 1670s, Laisan's activities came to light during the affair of the poisons, and in 1679, authorities arrested her following the capture of other poisoners who implicated her in their confessions. However, despite being extensively interrogated, Laisan still did not get tortured much, possibly because the king was also afraid, and prevented her from naming the influential figures in the French aristocracy. But despite one of the most horrifying scandals in the world, she was executed by burning on February 22, 1680, and her death marked the beginning of the end for the underground network of poisoners. However, after this event, the rumors among the big names of the country started to spread all over the world, and many also started criticizing the king for their safe pace. The king understood if things were still continue, then it would completely drain the reputation of the king to avoid further scandal and to protect the monarchy's reputation. Louis XIV ordered the public proceedings to stop in 1680, and by 1682, the court itself was disbanded, and this was the closing of the most dark chapter and horrifying scandal of the history. However, despite the Chambre Ardente successfully dismantled, the existence of witchcraft and the aristocratic corruption remained among the people's heads and continued to create a sense of fear among them. This scandal, which exposed acts of poisoning, witchcraft, and manipulation within Louis XIV's court, shows the lengths to which people were willing to go to secure power and influence. Looking back at this dark chapter in history reminds us of the importance of ethical leadership and accountability. If you've enjoyed uncovering the secrets of this fascinating story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more tales that bring history to life. And until then, you can definitely enjoy some of our most recent videos on our channel.